Welcome to the channel. I'm Neil. I'm a wrestling fan for over 40 years, been attending local live events for well over 15 of those years. And on this channel, I talk about professional wrestling, photography, and various different topics that come up. This is a bit of a general channel, admittedly. Today, of course, I'm talking about WWE Unreal, the Netflix documentary series that takes a look behind the scenes at WWE, both the personalities behind the wrestlers, the creative team, and the processes that go into the WWE storylines, which I will talk about in a little bit, and of course, general how WWE puts everything together. It's a very much genuinely a pro kind of WWE program. I know some people have their own opinion about these programs, and especially Unreal. If you look on any social media platform, people who've watched the same exact program will have different opinions about it. Some people like this kind of thing. I mean, like so Paul Heyman, John Cena, and even I saw on YouTube there, Devon Dudley. They don't like this kind of program really being made because of the reveal some of the secrets behind the magic, but people have their own thoughts and opinions, hopefully having watched the program. Now, there's 3 points that I really want to talk about in terms of WWE Unreal. Firstly, something that I saw just last night, which is a Dave Meltzer tweet. Dave Meltzer is a very well known wrestling journalist, reporter. He retweeted something, and I don't think it was honestly a supposed gotcha moment. I don't know. But he retweeted something, and I'll go through it because there's a couple of different levels to this, and this is related to Unreal. The original tweet was put out by someone called at Alan underscore cheap shot, who tweeted out a photograph of Michael P.S. Hayes, who works behind the scenes in WWE as a producer, who's shown heavily in season 2 of WWE Unreal, with the text saying, hashtag on this day, in 1988, Cincinnati, Ohio, Michael Hayes no-showed a show in Cincinnati, Ohio due to a contract dispute and was fired. So that's the original tweet. Dave Meltzer retweeted it with adding the text, so it's kind of a quote tweet, I guess they call it, but was called a retweet, adding his text that said the following: weird. Didn't Michael Hayes just on Unreal say something about Trinity Fatu? Now, that is in relation to a topic that came up because Trinity Fatu, aka Naomi, is one of the individuals heavily featured in WWE Unreal Season 2. Naomi, as she's known, is a very major star in WWE now, and it is related to her a few years ago when she was one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions along with Sasha Banks. Both of them had had enough, whatever the situation was, decided to quit the company, handed back the tag team championship belts into the office. They were backstage before a show. I believe it may have been a Raw or whatever it was. But they went into an office, handed back the tag team championship belts, and walked out of WWE. Naomi not returning for 2 years. Sasha Banks, now Mercedes Moné, is working now in AEW. The the part that Dave Meltzer is referring to is that they mentioned that situation about Naomi and about her history in coming back to WWE. And Michael Hayes says about it is that it's, you know, whatever the situation is, you really should show up and do the show. No matter what the situation, whatever's going on, you should actually show up and do the show. Now, obviously, Meltzer is saying, well, that's weird. Didn't he, you know, obviously he's saying, well, that's weird. Michael Hayes saying that, where he's did the same back in 1988. He walked out on a company. Well, first of all, it's 1988 we're talking about. That's a long time ago. And I think that there's absolutely the possibility that Michael Hayes, and yes, he's absolutely extremely loyal to WWE. We know that. Again, it's a pro WWE program, and many of those shown have got a great loyalty to the company. And again, people will think that about that whatever they will. But there's very much the chance that Michael Hayes, and I don't know whether that's his only walking out on a company or dispute or whatever. He very well in the time. We're talking about what 38 years since 1988, a long, long time. He very well either regret himself doing that or walking out and maybe think that's now the wrong thing to do. There's definitely the possibility of that. He might say, look back and say, oh, he was a much younger guy. Maybe he made a mistake. Maybe he did the wrong thing. Maybe he should have just turned up, even if it ended up being the very last show for the company, and say, them whatever, having words and parting ways after the show, and that was his last date for the company. Maybe that could happen. Obviously, there's plenty of time for Michael Hayes, age and stuff like that to go on. That he may very well nowadays think that actually, yeah, I was a young guy. I was wrong to do that. I should have turned up and had words, even again if it's been ended up being the last wrestling date I did for that company and I went elsewhere. It's very much a possibility that he thinks now that actually what he did was wrong. What I will say about this, and again, I'm not saying it's an absolute supposed gotcha moment for Dave Meltzer. I did actually reply to him saying that basically that it's a long time ago. Maybe he thinks he's wrong. Somebody said something very similar to him. Maybe he thinks he's wrong, and he actually replied to them saying, "Well, he didn't say that though, did he?" But you only get clips. As the interview might have gone on for a while, he might have talked about it for several minutes, and it might have been edited down to what he said. And I personally would say it's a very difficult thing to say about a situation. You don't, unless you're in a situation like that, unless you are actually in a situation where whether you're being fairly unfairly treated, whether you're being sidelined, maybe underpaid, not valued, maybe you're kind of again basically maybe being sidelined, maybe you're not really doing very much, where maybe your role, a lot of your role, has been taken away from you. It depends. It's very difficult. It definitely genuinely differs from situation to situation, and I'm not trying to kind of excuse anything or trying to back up Michael Hayes. That I don't know what the situation with Michael Hayes back in 1988 was, and I can't honestly say fully, obviously, what the situation was with uh, Naomi and Sasha Banks a few years ago. It's unless you were there, unless you were living through it, it's impossible to know the exact details of the situation and what it truly was going on at the time. And I'm sure both sides at the time, Naomi and Sasha Banks and WWE, they'll have their own opinion on what was going on at the time. And I think WWE put out a statement at the time, basically kind of condemning, I think, Naomi and Sasha for walking out on them. Um, so it's very difficult. It does definitely genuinely differ from situation to situation in regards to what is going on, how you're being treated, what the exact situation was, and especially, of course, walking out is very difficult. Sometimes, you know, especially if it's just like a general job, you know, maybe they threaten not to pay you the money that they're owed that they owe you from wages and stuff like that. So if you walk out, maybe they can legally say, oh well, you walked out on us, so maybe we've got this 2 months wages that we supposedly owe you, but we're not owing you now, and we can find a legal loophole not to pay you. It's extremely difficult to say that. Again, I'm not saying Dave Meltzer is trying to have this as a supposed gotcha moment, but it's very, very difficult. And again, the overall really arc of this is maybe when he was interviewed on for WWE Unreal, maybe Michael Hayes actually thought, and maybe now thinks that actually when he was a young guy and he did something like that, maybe now he thinks that was the wrong decision to make. He maybe again should have showed up, even if they'd ended up agreeing to part the ways and him go elsewhere. Then maybe maybe he thinks that now. So it's difficult again, situation to situation. It is extremely difficult to judge. You can only, if you're in a situation like that, you're really the only one to judge what is the appropriate action to take. And maybe again, even something like that happens, and maybe when you're older, maybe you've got a difference of opinion looking back on it, or maybe you don't. Maybe if you walk out or you don't walk out, you might end up thinking, well, actually, that was the right thing to do because I did get paid the money that I was owed, or maybe I did walk out and I wasn't paid the money I owed and I should have not walked out. It's difficult. Each person has to face the situation themselves and decide at the time, with the evidence they have, what is the right decision, and again, whether they're proven right or wrong in the long term. I also want to talk about Chelsea Green. This is something that's also been much discussed on social media. Now, I admire Chelsea Green. Not had the chance to ever meet her, but she is one of those who's genuinely an extremely versatile performer. Now, some of the comments on social media, I think, has been kind of great. A lot of support for Chelsea Green. Um, Basically, what the thing is with her is that especially during season two, we see her and breaking her nose and stuff like that. It's amazing. She just, I mean, you've got to kind of admire the her personality. You've got to admire her work ethic. You've got to, I also admire her in ring skills as well. She's really really good. Uh, what she basically states during it is that she is pretty much happy to fulfill any role, whether it's comedy, whether it's preparing women for a main event, a higher spot in the card, helping them, basically work on their in-ring skills or working on bringing out their personality, or even actually is very quickly suggested what I think is a really good thing, getting someone used to WWE in terms of especially like a new signing. Sometimes there are few people that are willing to do that in professional wrestling. You know, even in WWE, there are many different wrestlers who will have different styles, and obviously, if you're a new signing, even if you're a new signing to WWE, going from like working the independents to WWE, that's a massive step up. And I'm even talking, including NXT in that. There's all old stuff about independence. You're working to the crowd, but then in WWE, one of the major differences is that there's cameras there, and you've got to make sure that the cameras get the shots that they need for television or pay-per-views, premium live events. The cameras have got to be able to capture the facial expressions or the moves and the moments especially. That's something that's often talked about during Unreal, is about the moments and the ongoing um I can't remember who exactly says that near the end, but somebody says, I think it's maybe even Seth Rollins, but says about WWE is a continuous collection of moments, which is absolutely. You think of a lot of moments of WWE. I think a lot of moments will come to your mind before matches if you start thinking about WWE, and you, especially maybe growing up watching it, you'll remember particular moments in matches first, or moments or segments or something. And that's one thing that WWE, especially in the social media age, really kind of tries to do. They've tried to bring in a lot of moments. Um, and I have to say, that is something that if someone like Chelsea Green is absolutely happy to do, she is happy to work, and I think you need that. You need somebody to say, obviously again depends on the person, but if you have someone who knows the WWE style, who's used to doing it, who can educate a new signing into, right, this is how we do it, this is where the hard cam is, or this is what we do, or this is the timing that we do, particularly maybe for advertisement breaks or something like that. If somebody's willing to do that, then that's fantastic. To have that kind of mid card kind of role as well, so that they can work with anybody, put somebody over, as it's called, have have a competitive match with them, but make that person look like a star. I know that people will say that professional wrestling has changed, and it absolutely has. You know, but that kind of role. I mean, Steve Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler, held that kind of role in WWE for many many years. He would work with guys, put them over. You know, like so Ultimate Enemy. I think like Ultimate Warrior to I think even Rocky Maivia to loads of people over the years. He would kind of be one of the first people, if not the first, that they worked with on a regular basis, especially on house shows and things like that. And he would help them with kind of refine their work for WWE. Again, it's much different from independence or anywhere else. There is a unique WWE style even nowadays, again, with cameras and timings and for advert breaks or whatever it is, or if it's TV, there's different ways that WWE like to do things. So I think having someone like in that role, because there was a guy locally with a promotion I used to go to, I won't talk about him because he turned out to be a wrong one, but somebody like that who would actually work with somebody and have them prepare and bring them on and okay, even kind of evaluate them, and saying okay, well, we're working together, you're doing this, your timing is off here, or you're doing this, but how about here, and working with them and literally prepping them. I think someone like Chelsea Green would be great and is great for that kind of role. One of the old terms in professional wrestling was a carpenter. A carpenter in pro wrestling, really, the definition kind of is a wrestler whose job is to make others look good, often by losing convincingly and quote unquote building the match so the opponent appears stronger. Like I said, putting someone over, making them look good night after night, so they can be made look good, basically, so they can be put over as a star while underneath they're not like a swan kicking their feet under the water trying to swim so they look graceful above. But I guess it's kind of like that. So underneath, instead their legs are kind of kicking under the water frantically, they are getting used again to the WWE style or getting refining the character. Refining again, using Ultimate Warrior as an example, kind of honing in to listening to the crowd and watching back and getting reception from the fans and maybe even those backstage, including WWE, and them saying, okay, this aspect of the character is working, this is not. People go crazy for this move, but we don't think you should do maybe the diving like Ultimate Warrior, like you shouldn't do the, like say a missile drop kick off the top rope. So we don't do that anymore. But you do this clothesline, and then you work on basically the outline of the character and kind of the move sets that you do. I think someone like Chelsea Green, you do need people like that in professional wrestling. Someone who will work with talent, someone who will help prepare them. And often this can be a veteran, this can be someone who's maybe been in the company for a long time. Again, wrestling has changed, but I genuinely still think that you absolutely need somebody like that. And I'm not saying you need to bury them all the time in a company like WWE. Um, they could have the odd win or two, of course, so they're not looking like a complete loser. But someone who is willing to go out there and work with anybody again, especially new signings, getting used to WWE and being that kind of welcome committee. Because I know obviously wrestling and egos and things like that, especially in a company like WWE, that can be extremely difficult to go into a company. But I think someone like that is a really good, and especially Chelsea Green says it fantastically as well. She is getting booked on a regular basis. She's not as much sometimes as she wishes to. I think it's season one. Is it maybe? Well, I think it's a Survivor series. In Canada, I think it was one of the shows anyway. I believe it's Survivor series. In Canada, she wanted to so much be on the show, but unfortunately, she ended up not being on the show. So there's ups and downs to that role as well. But I definitely think that companies like WWE need someone like that. Again, wrestling has changed. Things do change over the years, but you know, having someone who can help work with young talent, so again they can refine it, get used to doing, especially getting even coming up to, from NXT or starting NXT. Um, because I don't think any of I don't know about nowadays. I don't think really any like the trainers or the coaches in NXT really work any of the shows. Think pretty much all they're all. I don't think any of them wrestle anymore. Uh, but kind of getting used to it. So having someone there for a new signing to calm them down, to allow them to take their time, and especially with WWE, you see it during season two as well. Things again like working to the cameras or getting instructions from the referee who's hearing from the back about oh, do this, don't do that, or eliminate this, or you're close to time, or you need to go for you need to suppose quote unquote go home now in terms of finish the match up soon. You need to start do whatever it is you're doing to finish the match, like whatever the sequence is for the end of the match. You need to maybe jump to that and stuff. Doing something like that, which I think is one that also something that I feel is missed out a lot for now. Do not having a lot of house shows. It gives a lot. It means that a lot of people nowadays have to do that kind of stuff on live TV or the premium live events. They don't have as many house shows, non televised events to get used to working the WWE way of doing things. Now, again, I say that absolutely someone like Chelsea Green is brilliant. Doing that, but such a versatile performer and having something like that. Now, I will say personally as well that it's kind of unfortunate, and I will, well, quickly, I'm kind of going off, not on a tangent, but I will say someone like Chelsea Green. Well, it's all kind of really part of it. Someone like Chelsea Green. Um, I absolutely say some people have said Chelsea Green could absolutely be a women's world champion, undoubtedly. I think you can build up someone these days in professional wrestling very easily. I'll talk about that in a future video that I want to do about wrestling finishing moves and holds. I think similar to that, I think you can build up somebody. You could even nowadays, I think you could kind of take them off TV and build them up slowly and have them as a threat, basically. I think Chelsea Green could easily do that, even if she's done a lot of comedic things. Um, I definitely think she can still be, and she still has the skill to challenge or be a women's world champion, even if eventually it's kind of a reward for being in that role for all these years. What I genuinely think, though, is that not everybody can be a world champion. I've always had the opinion that, yeah, you can be a great wrestler, and obviously, many wrestlers have it in their mind that they want to be the champion of a company. They want to be, especially on an independent level, it's much easier. And I think you have that mindset, and I know a lot of local guys, again, from going to local shows for over 15 years, I know a lot of local guys, and I'm not going to say names, but I can pick out a couple of them that I think potentially in the future could be local champions in that company. That depends on them. It depends on the company booking, the situations, the storylines, everything that goes into it. But there's one or two I think could definitely easily be champion in the future, and there are many others that are slowly building up to have that potential. But not everybody, let's be completely honest here, not everybody is going to be able to reach that point where they are world champion. Not everybody has that capability, especially in a company like WWE, where they are main event worthy or at least world title worthy. Not that I'm saying that they're bad, but especially in WWE's eyes, there may be people that I mean, like Arn Anderson, for example, one of my absolute favourites in professional wrestling. Arn Anderson, the Enforcer, one of the best. I grew up watching him since the late 1980s. Fantastic performer, was really devastated when he had to retire. He could, yeah, I think he could quickly held the world title definitely, but I don't think a company like WCW or even WWE saw him really as a world champion. He would have definitely been accepted as a world champion without a doubt. I mean, look at a guy like Ron Simmons. He claimed the WCW championship then uh, from Vader, which is a great match to see. I believe the match is up on one of WWE's YouTube channels, where he loses the title to Vader. I think I think I think both matches where he wins and loses the titles are up on one of the WWE YouTube channels. But certainly, he kind of faded from the world title scene after that. And I think not everybody's going to reach the level um, of a world champion. Again, especially in a company like WWE, for whatever reason, there could be a variety of reasons, but um, that can actually also hurt somebody. WWE, again, and especially in terms of their company, if they sometimes think that, okay, well, this person, we're not really looking at them as a future world champion, unfortunately, that means that WWE be might eventually get rid of them, which I sincerely hope they don't. For somebody like Chelsea Green, Triple H seems really enamoured with Io Sky, and there's potential for her partner, husband, I'm not sure, Evil, whoever he is to her, potentially coming into WWE soon. Um, I think the company again, especially like WWE, that can hurt you as well. So it could be a positive that again, like Chelsea Green, you get booked all the time, you work a load of the shows, so you're earning a decent amount of money. But then again, in the future, maybe they think, well, actually, they're not really world champion material. Maybe we'll let them go. Again, times have changed, things have changed, the industry has changed. You know, unless you're like a producer or something like that, I don't think you get that kind of Steve Lombardi type of tenure going on, unfortunately now. But I certainly hope that Chelsea Green continues to work and continues to be a versatile performer and and proves her worth continually as she does to WWE and has a long, long time with the company. I really do think that again these kind of carpenters, so called people who can work with variety of performers and do various different roles, even PR stuff. You'll be willing to go out and do interviews with media, the community projects and everything like that. There are genuinely, I still think, again, professional wrestling has changed very much, but I still feel that it's even in companies like WWE, who are always looking to have the best of the best, there is still positions, I think, for people like Chelsea Green and others who are solid workers, were willing to do anything, be used, however, by the company in terms of working with new talent, working with however, getting people over. There is still and always should be a place for them in professional wrestling. The third and final part that I want to talk about is the creative process in WWE. Now, again, some people have actually watched Unreal, and some people have really commented badly about the creative team and the process in WWE. We sincerely do not know how much of the actual creative stuff we really truly see on Unreal, both in season one and season two. How real it is as well. We may see clips of a few minutes from a couple hours of meetings. Do they know that, okay, this is the portion of the meeting maybe where we are being filmed, so we'll generalize stuff or we'll come up with a couple of bits we already have and we'll talk about those because those are the bits we've already decided that's happening. It's extremely difficult to know the reality of that process. I mean, again, people like Devon Dudley, who John Cena, Paul Heyman, people like that have talked about, not really wanting the magic to be shown behind the scenes and not really fans of it, especially Cena. In a couple of interviews that he's done for this show now, he really doesn't talk about very much because, again, he doesn't particularly like and Paul Heyman is a bit vocal on this as well. In the episodes, he doesn't believe that everything should be shown, which I don't think everything should. You know, one of the good things about this is that it's shown a few months uh, behind, really, in terms of, it's shown a few months later, so stuff like the Seth Rollins injury or the again the stuff with Naomi and stuff and Trent Naomi Jade Cargill stuff, that's all kind of shown a bit behind. So we know that that's already happened. It's not like we're watching it live and getting spoilers for upcoming things. That's one of the things that I think true. And again, I don't think we see everything. I don't think we maybe perhaps maybe see genuine meetings. Maybe we do see bits of genuine meetings, but there's always certainly a possibility, especially with so full on ways that WWE do things. There's definitely absolutely possibilities. They might have meetings that maybe, let's say, the full 2 hour meeting is recorded and they clip it up for and edit it for WWE Unreal. There's absolutely the possibility that on another day or another night they have another meeting that's obviously unfilmed, not filmed, on Zoom or whatever in person, and they then discuss things on that meeting as if it's like kind of the real meeting of deciding things. That said, as well, something that I also want to quickly kind of talk about is part of something that some people have taken weirdly great hate to, is maybe maybe it's just too strong a word, but people have not really liked the fact that some of the suggestions basically of the creative teams that are put forward during the clips that we saw. One of the best examples is the Pat McAfee Gunther match that takes place. And some people have been taken, again, they've not really liked basically the fact that there's the suggestion that maybe Pat McAfee beats Gunther. Now that doesn't happen. Gunther ended up putting Pat McAfee to sleep with the sleeper hold after putting it in a couple of times. I have to kind of very vehemently actually disagree with this. A lot of people are being really upset about the fact that these kind of things are suggested. But I think Triple H lays it out very well in season one about the supposed alternate universe theory, that that's the way that Triple H puts it across. Basically, what it is that okay, you have an idea for a storyline, you have an idea for these two individuals having a match. Let's say they've even got they've got the wrestlers in mind. They know who they're using. They know the general storyline, and obviously maybe this feud goes for several matches, seemingly like maybe the Drew McIntyre Cody Rhodes feud that is seemingly maybe ongoing, maybe even to WrestleMania, which I'm not too much a fan of, because I think they've had a few matches lately. But let's say they've got that feud, they know it's Cody, they know it's Drew, and they know there's going to be several matches over the course of many months. Well, the alternate universe theory that Triple H says is okay, well, will each match or each segment or each bit that they're doing of telling the story, they look at okay, which way can this go? Basically, like, okay, this match, we think, okay, how does it look if Drew wins this match? How does it look if Cody wins this match? And where do we go from there? If Drew wins, how do we see the story progressing? If Cody wins, how do we see the story progressing and what happens there? I personally think that is absolutely part of the job of the creative team, is to do exactly this. Especially even if Triple H has, again, his own mind of, okay, Cody's going to win this match or Drew's going to win this match by escaping the cage through interference by Jacob Fatu and win the WWE Championship, as has recently happened, which I thought was great. Always happy to see Drew as a champion, especially the undisputed WWE champion. Fantastic to see a Scottish champion, obviously. I think it's absolutely part of the job of the creative team or of any booker, so called, in professional wrestling, to have a look at the variations that you can have during the stories. I think it's the same really as if you're writing any other story, if you're a novelist, if you're a writer. Okay, sometimes you may very well have, again, the characters in mind. You know the characters that are going to be featured in the story. And maybe sometimes you know the story that you're going to tell that goes from point A to a point B. That's the story, and that's how you're going to tell. That's what's going to happen. This is the story that's going to unfold exactly as you want it to. Absolutely, that can sometimes be the case. You have the characters, and you know the story. This is the journey that's going to take place for these characters from point A to point B. Let's even say it's from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania or whatever. From point A to point B, you know this is the story that you're going to be told, and sometimes that's it. That's the story locked in. That's absolutely the story that you want to tell. That's how it's going to be. But I think it's a part of the job of a creative process team like in WWE or a booker or any assistant booker or anything like that to also, in many cases, suggest alternatives. Again, okay, you're A to B, and you're saying, okay, Cody's going to win eventually. I think it's a job for somebody to say, okay, well, what if Drew wins? What if Drew wins all this? Or what if this happens? What if that happens? To offer alternative possibilities and storylines. So instead of maybe even going from point A to point B, maybe you go from point A to point C, or point D, or point Z. Whatever it is, I think that's part of the job to explore what the possibilities are in the story. So again, well, sometimes again you're convinced that A to B is the story. Maybe sometimes you're not so convinced. Maybe you think, well, okay, A to B, but we've done A to B before, and we're telling the same story, maybe with similar characters. Well, what if we go to these different things? I think it's definitely a part of the job, especially in a company like WWE, for them to suggest alternatives. I know Triple H seems really good from the clips that we've seen and we've heard over the years. He seemed to be really good at having a overall grasp of the big picture, as I said during the show. Um, but I think that definitely the part of the process in the creative teams of any wrestling company is to look at, okay, what are the possibilities that we could also do, and various different characters, especially in something like professional wrestling. One of the things that's talked about, ironically, actually, this is kind of ironically, part of the stuff that's talked about is Seth Rollins' injury with the knee, where he does the Asai moonsault, lands on his legs, lands on his feet, basically, and supposedly suffers a knee injury. Now, obviously, as we know and as we see in the series, he didn't really hurt his knee, but everybody thought he did. Now, obviously, regardless of whatever happens in professional wrestling, you will get people on social media, and I think this is important to say as well. You will get people on social media, again, especially in companies like WWE, whatever happens, even if they see somebody crash and burn on a ladder, or their leg goes sideways to an inhumane degree, and somebody gets hurt or whatever, even if we can see that's an absolute genuine injury, you will always get some idiot on social media saying, "Oh, that's a work. They're not really hurt. They'll be back next week or whatever." It's a storyline injury. You'll always get people like that Some people just to be idiots, and some people so on the rare occasion like the Seth Rollins one, when it turns out to be that, they'll can claim, oh well, I was right. See, I was right. It's always that on social media these days. People will switch and change their opinions, and then when the one out of 100 or 1,000 times that they're right, they'll pound their chest and say, "Oh well, I was right, wasn't I? I was right." It's kind of like almost like uh, kind of I said earlier. I talk about photography, and this is not a go at anybody, but sometimes it's like when a new camera or a new product is rumored and continuous, people will say, oh, it's coming out in January, no, it's coming out in February, no, it's coming out in March, no, it's coming out in April, no, it's May, now it's June. They'll keep changing it as the product doesn't get revealed, or as we don't hear an announcement about the product over time. They'll keep changing the date that they understand the announcement is coming. They'll keep changing it till later and later and later. So when eventually it gets announced, they'll say, "Oh well, we were right all along because we said September." When they're like, "Yeah, you've been saying about every month since the start of the year. You said January, then February, then March, and April." You always get that kind of thing with social media nowadays. You also always get that. So I think generally it is absolutely the job of the creative process team in a company like WWE to suggest alternative routes, to suggest what they do. It's kind of like if you uh, different things. I'm only going to go down the tangent of different examples, but um, it's like if you do something for a long time, or you're putting in new processes in at work or something, and you suggest, well, we find it easier to do it this way, so we'll do it this way or whatever. But I definitely think it's the job of the creative process team in a company like WWE to suggest alternatives, and I even actually have backups as well, because actually, again, I told about the Seth Rollins injury where he there was a fantastic moment where he let the crutches go and he ran down and he cashed in the Money in the Bank briefcase. But now he's out with a shoulder injury. He's got that shoulder injury. And what if the knee injury had been genuine? What if we've seen it before with people like Rob Van Dam, and I saw it somewhere else. I can't remember who it was, but they kind of did a very similar or attempted to do a very similar baseball slide between someone's legs, and they rolled their ankle. And I think was it the Miz and Jericho? I think it was Jericho involved. I can't remember why I saw the clip again, but I think it was Chris Jericho. He had to basically push the referee and force the referee to disqualify him to end the match. So what if an injury had genuinely occurred at that time, or any injury occurs at a time? You get like somebody like Seth Rollins, you've got major plans for him, and maybe they're in the midst of the storyline, and again, maybe he just does the moonsault, lands on his feet as he's supposed to, but genuinely just we've seen it before over the years where someone will do a simple move and hurt themselves or get injured, or just um, you know something will happen and they'll pick up an injury. Maybe you're in the middle of a decent storyline with them that's being built up to maybe something like WrestleMania or SummerSlam or the Royal Rumble. I think a part of the creative process team is to suggest alternatives, including his backup. Because what if Seth Rollins gets injured? What if Cody Rhodes goes down with a serious injury? What if somebody else gets hurt, Naomi gets hurt, Jade Cargill gets injured again and has to take time off, or what if they have a a loss in the family, or there's something happens which means that they can't be used for a particular show, or they're out for a time or something. I think these kind of alternate theories and potential alternatives absolutely should be something that should be done, and I hope they maybe be kept and noted down. So I don't know whether they record any of these meetings. I sincerely doubt it, because obviously if stuff like that gets out, then especially again nowadays, that would absolutely. Um, I think TNA apparently, as I record this, I saw the other day. Apparently, they kept somehow the audio going of the next show that they were taping. Something I'm not sure. I don't quite understand what exactly happened, but supposedly some audio was played and revealed a briefcase holder that they've got of the Feast and Fired. Things like that. Things sometimes, especially nowadays with leaks and all that kind of stuff. People will leak this information, and some people. I hate that as well. That's part of the stuff that I don't like, the leaks and stuff like that. Um, I know it's part of modern life with different bits and pieces. Even we've seen it with Marvel movies recently, with that upcoming Avengers movie. But um, there's always people looking to leak things, whether it's just be for internet clout or money. Maybe sometimes for some of these kind of like TMZ style websites that might pay them money to leak stuff or whatever. Um, but definitely, you never know what's going to happen in professional wrestling. Someone might get legitimately injured, and maybe you have to pick up the storyline with someone else. And a good thing like something like the Vision faction, that okay, Seth Rollins is injured, but maybe again you could switch it to having, say, Braun Breaker be the kind of focus of the group, of bringing him up, who's a young talent who I see as a future world champion without a doubt. He's got tremendous ability. He could maybe be the focus of the group, and maybe when Seth Rollins comes back, either they butt heads or whatever. But definitely, the great if you're, I think if you're working in any kind of creative process in professional wrestling, then you should think of alternatives. You should explore story options, character options, because again, people can get hurt. Situations can happen where it's out of your control, where you can't proceed with the storyline exactly as you want to. And maybe some things do not just simply get the reaction from the fans that you want. It's like again, without going into examples, maybe you're trying to turn someone heel, but then they're just so beloved by the audience that the fans, you could attack the biggest, you could have, real babyface wrestler who's absolutely loved and loved by the fans, and you could have them attack maybe the second biggest babyface, or the second biggest babyface could maybe attack the biggest babyface, and you want to turn that second babyface heel. But maybe they get cheered by the fans. Maybe they just get cheered. Maybe they think, oh yeah, great, that's that babyface trying to stake their claim as the biggest lion in Africa, and the biggest predator in the company and stuff like that. Now they're really trying to claim their main event spot that maybe we've been wanting them to push for the last few years. Maybe it just doesn't work out the way that you want them to. You don't get the reaction that the way that you think you're going to, so you have to change plan. So again, I think generally if you're involved in the creative process in professional wrestling, alternative theories, backup plans, those are all things that I think is part of the job. Whether you use them or not, whether you disregard them or not, it's up to you. Maybe even if you come up with a couple of ideas, maybe you go with the main idea that you've come up with. Maybe you come up with a similar or slightly different idea that maybe down the line, maybe some point down the road, you could think of, well, actually, I had an idea a few years ago that we didn't end up using, but in this situation with these two guys or team women or whoever it is, these two wrestlers, actually, I will go back and look at my files and look up that bit of paper if you keep it or whatever, and I will look at the storyline that I thought of maybe using that we didn't, and maybe now, bit down the road, 2 or 3 years later, or maybe even a few months, well, actually, this could suit these two individuals very well. So I absolutely think that one of the things that, again, people go on against is the different suggestions, like Pat McAfee winning against Gunther and stuff like that. I absolutely think it's part of their job to explore all options, to keep everything in mind, and think about what could potentially happen or not happen, and explore all the options, see where they are, and definitely one of the things I've always thought of Some bookers do that. I know some people who don't, who just have their own mindset of this is what's happening, and I don't care what the reaction is. I've heard of that before as well. I won't go into that, but certainly, um, I think as a booker, you think of alternatives, you think of other possibilities, other variations of storyline, and you also keep a tabs. And I know some people do. You also kind of keep a tabs again on the reaction of the fans of how the story is going. So much like in a regular match that that people always talk about, that you listen to the fans. Maybe you want to do a really slow paced match, but then maybe the fans are sitting on their hands, or maybe they're not reacting well to it, so you change things up. That's what part of professional wrestling really is. And again, I know the wrestling industry has changed, but that is still something I think wrestlers should hopefully be able to have the ability to do, is to listen to the reaction of the fans, and if need be, change things up. And change the way they're doing things, and maybe call the match on the fly. So if certain bits or pieces are getting reactions from the fans, then they go after that, depending on what reaction that they are aiming for the particular match and storyline maybe that they're telling. They definitely, anybody in professional wrestling should certainly be listening to the fans, keeping a tab on the reaction. Not saying maybe sometimes you go with the story regardless of what the reaction and the response is from the fans, because maybe the overall storyline is going to eventually pay off and be, fans will look at it, oh, well, I see why they did that, or I see why they did this, and stuff like that. But I definitely think creative process, part of their job is to keep an open mind, and to really basically just be open to all possibilities in the end, because I definitely think that whether you use it or not, whether you react to it or not, you should definitely keep a kind of open mind about what directions that you should go. I personally think that WWE Unreal, I've enjoyed the 2 seasons. Again, it's very much a pro WWE show. Obviously, it's kind of them also showing, oh well, this is how the ideas that we come up with, and these are the ones that work. There are a couple of occasions where it doesn't work. I feel kind of sorry for Lyra Valkyria and a couple of others whose spots and matches just don't quite work. In those states, sometimes it does just happens. Unfortunately, sometimes I've also seen it myself where two guys having some good matches get together on a night to have a match, and it just doesn't work. It just didn't happen. For whatever reason, the chemistry wasn't there, or it was just a night off for them, and not in a good way in terms of how easy it is. It was just yeah, it was just a blick match. So definitely something, keeping an open mind in wrestling. Um, it's definitely a good thing. I would say I enjoyed Unreal season 1 and season 2. Again, you kind of think, it's a pro WWE show. It's kind of partly built to make them look good, but again, regardless of whether your thoughts of whether this stuff behind the scenes should be shown or not, I genuinely hope that if you're a professional wrestling fan, whatever your so-called biases, whether you're pro or anti WWE, pro or anti AEW or New Japan or whoever, I would honestly hope, and I know that many people won't, but I genuinely hope that whether if you're just a fan of professional wrestling, that you sit down as that, as just a fan of professional wrestling, and try to enjoy the show as is.